So, let's say you're into yoga or Pilates, or maybe you dabble in gymnastics like me. Either way, you know being flexible is key to doing what you love. That's why Smoothie King created this Stretch and Flex smoothie for people like us, with whole fruits and organic veggies, plus type 2 collagen. Make it part of your daily fitness routine to support flexibility and joint health. So try the Stretch and Flex smoothie in tart cherry or pineapple kale. Order online today for pickup or delivery. Smoothie King, rule the day.
Hike the trail? Check. Order takeout? Check. Schedule heart checkup? Done. We've all adapted to a new way of living. Keep your healthcare on schedule with Johns Hopkins Medicine, where your health and safety are our highest priorities. We're ready to care for you through virtual and in-person visits across Maryland and the greater Washington region. Your health, our experts, safely caring for you. Schedule your care now. Learn more at hopkinsmedicine.org/safe.
So welcome to the Stephen Shiels radio show. I am here with Michael Dixon. Michael Dixon is a French horn player who's played in the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, and he's played in many major operas as well. So how are you, Michael?
Yeah, really good. Thanks for having me, Stephen.
You're welcome, Michael. So tell us about your musical experience.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a musical family, so there was always music around. I was the fourth of 5 kids, so there's 3 older sisters all playing instruments and singing and playing piano. There was plenty going on. My dad was a brass instrument teacher, and my mother played piano and sang lots, so there was always something going on, and we all learned piano from my mother's mother. So there was lots of music around. Mm-hmm. And I decided when I was 13 I wanted to be a professional musician, and I was lucky to achieve that at the age of 16.
Wow, so very experienced. And what's been the struggles for you being a professional musician on a financial point of view?
Well, I was lucky for most of it. It's been a bit harder in the last 10 years, but because I'm freelance, but there was a sort of choice I made to come down to New South Wales to do further academic study. But other than that, I've mostly had good full-time jobs in orchestras, so it's been a good life from that point of view.
And what's been the hardest part of your life playing in a professional orchestra at a high level?
Yeah, well, you get anxiety from time to time. You have to deal with it and make sure you're on the top of your game, practicing well, and reevaluating the relationship to the audience. So it's not just about me. I think that was the biggest thing I had to do. At one stage I was getting a little bit tired of it, and just had to sort of reposition the way I was, engaging with the audience. So, but having done that, it became a bit easier. But.
And what's been one of the hardest orchestral pieces you've played, and the most challenging?
Well, I think the ones that are where you'd like, Venus from the planets, mm-hmm. and you've just played Mars, and then you played the first horn player. You played 4 notes, but there's nobody else playing it. There's a chorus around. There's an orchestra of 100 people, and there's an audience, and there's nobody but horn 1. So you're totally exposed. That's about the hardest thing.
And were you always first horn in the orchestra, or did you have to work your way up to play?
I worked my way up. My first job was 4th, and then I did a bit of second while a colleague was away on leave, and then my second main job was a bit of 3rd, and then I played second for a while, and with a bit of 3rd and a tiny bit of 1st, and then I played first horn. So I've done them all.
You always find that it's always the first horn player or any first chair in the orchestra. It's more easier because the second, third, fourth has to keep the rhythm going, and sometimes it's you've got to count more. My experience, I've always played second clarinet, but I found it always improved myself. Did you find starting from fourth horn and working your way up to the first chair, you improved more, or how did you feel?
Well, I felt I got a really good knowledge of what everybody else was going through, you know. So when I got to first, I knew what it felt like to be all the other positions and what they needed to do, what they needed from the first horn in order to make their life as, you know, straightforward as possible.
Mm. And when you're auditioning for a symphony orchestra, I've auditioned too, and I found, you could play a passage from Beethoven, but if they didn't like the way you articulated the notes, it's a no in their books. How do you find with wanting to play your own interpretation versus the orchestra, how the symphony wants you to play it?
Well, that's an ongoing issue, regardless of whether you're auditioning or whether you got the job. You know, can't always play it the way you want to play it. You've got to merge. I mean, you've got to listen to the other people around you, and if other people are playing it a bit differently, you've got to either negotiate with them to, see if you can persuade them that, my point of view is more interesting, or the conductor might have a view, and the conductor has to try and, bring views together and have a personal, idea of what should be sounded. So we're always, finding a way into the music through other people's ears and eyes.
Mm. See, that's the thing with any creative arts and music. There's really no right answer, and it can be frustrating at times. So many different recordings out there. We all have our favourites and our least favourite, but I think if you communicate it well, people will like it.
I think that's it. If the people, who have the creative responsibility have a real point of view about what they want to hear, and that has some sort of integrated approach, then you buy into it. Whether you fully like it or not, you just think it's worth doing that way. So that can be really interesting. Even I remember when I was in Brisbane, and we started doing a lot of experimentation with historical performance practice. Again, you can't always be right, but it did make it fresher. And even if the person's point of view was perhaps on the extreme side, it was still a point of view that was well articulated and well thought out, and so that made it fun.
Mm-hmm. And you've played in a lot of chamber work, have you?
Oh yeah, all the way through, right from as a youngster in high school. We had where I was growing up in New Zealand, we had high school chamber music competitions, right through the country. So my teacher at high school got a couple of groups together in the high school, and we got involved, and that was really interesting. So yeah, from an early age I was involved, and I really loved that sort of approach to music making.
What age were you when you decided to take it to an academic level and take it more serious?
I was in my 30s then.
Yep. So mature age.
So I've been doing the practical thing for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
And, I actually started studying Indian music.
Mm-hmm.
And doing practical bit of the Indian drums, the tabla.
Mm-hmm.
And then a bit of the teacher would always warm up with a bit of singing, and then I'd also try playing some of the songs on the French horn. Mm-hmm. And but then from that I found out about a lecturer at the Queensland Con who wanted an assistant to transcribe some Indian folk music. Mm-hmm. And so that was quite a big project, and it got me a little bit interested in some academic approaches. So then I started doing a degree.
So when you transcribed the Indian music, did you have to notate it on a manuscript, or did you play it from ear?
Yeah, onto the manuscript and then onto on a computer in those days. What did I use? I think I had to use Finale because at that time Sybase was only available on an Acorn computer.
Mm.
Yeah, so before they did any other computers, they had only an English computer. So I didn't use that at that time. So yeah, I first just wrote it out by hand and then put it onto Finale, so it was a little, printed up a bit nicer for her publication.
Yeah, I think that.
I just use standard notation, trebles, clef, and all that.
Yeah. I think that's the best way when you're transcribing. Myself, I would just pencil and paper it, draft it out and then put it into Dorico or Sibelius and then play it back as well, play it on the instrument. Do you find when you were transcribing, did you loop it or did you stop-start? How was your method doing it?
Oh, I just had cassette tapes, we took an old school here. So I was just, putting it on and then go back over it and turn it back on. And I just stop and start.
Stop-start method. No, everyone's got their own techniques. Myself, I just phrase by phrase and pause it.
Yeah.
And sort of just play on the keyboard. But yeah, transcription, it's a very difficult thing to do properly, I think. It's not easy.
Yeah, I reckon I'd have to work out how to write, various vocal swoops and techniques, and just have a legend, so people could say, okay, that's what you mean by that, when it comes to notation, because the notation can't get 100% accurate as to what you're actually hearing.
But Michael, I think the audience might like to hear a few questions about your horn experience. So what brand of French horn do you play?
I'm using one by German maker Engelbert Schmidt.
Yep.
And this one's a triple horn.
Mm-hmm.
So the sort of standard horn most people use would be a double horn.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of people around with what's called a disc horn, and the triples are becoming. Well, there's a lot of them around now, but I mean, if you're playing professionally in an orchestra, you're not required to have a triple, but you'd find just about everybody's got a double horn, and there are still a few people around with single horns who find that does what they need.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my horns are very good quality. I've got on loan, I've got an instrument from a period instrument group, a baroque horn.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also got a classical horn, which you use hand technique and
mm-hmm.
no valves. So, and I've got another horn where I've changed one of the slides so I can do quarter tones really easily.
Mm.
So, yeah, a few different instruments, but the main one I use is the Engelbert Schmidt.
And how much is that worth?
I think nowadays you'd be set back about 20 grand or something like that.
Wow, that's a lot for a French horn. 20 grand.
Yeah, I think like a really good high quality double you wouldn't pay less than 15 mostly. The Alexanders and the Paxmans around that 15, I think, but often more. So I think you can even, for some doubles, you can pay 20. So
wow,
I wouldn't be surprised if I looked up a price list that the triple would be more than that now. But
and as a horn player, Michael, what are the worst keys to play the horn?
Look, F sharp major for a horn player. That's D major concert pitch. That's not so good.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to find a good fingering. If you're going anything more than a moderate tempo, the fingerings aren't so straightforward.
Mm.
It's a little harder to get it in tune nicely or easily.
Mm-hmm.
No, you can do it, of course, we have to, but it's not a standard key. You don't get it that often.
And I've noticed on your YouTube, you're doing microtonal music. What's your technique, and why have you started experimenting with microtonal music?
Yeah. Look, well, I started because just wanted to play standard repertoire with better tuning,
Hmm.
and then realised that the major triad on a French horn you can play really simply with three players, but just harmonics 4, 5, and 6, and they express the major triad really beautifully. As long as you play the fifth harmonic, which is the major third of the triad, if you play it not quite as loud as the other two notes, and it fits in simply and beautifully, and you don't have to adjust lip or hand or anything on the horn. It just plays it as it's heard beautifully. And what you find is that major third is lower than one on a standard keyboard.
Wow.
So, and this is a well-known part of music theory and tuning theory over the last 700 years or so. So there's a difference there, and that difference is, we can call it a microtone. So it's there and amongst our usual practice. So if we're playing in the key of C major and we're playing an E, we might have to change the tuning of the E depending on the chord we're playing with. And the adjustment is just a microtone, So because of that, and also because of, there's a wonderful piece by Benjamin Britten, there's Serenade for a voice tenor and the horn and strings, and the prologue and the epilogue, which are exactly the same music, except one's played on stage and the epilogue's played off stage. But there are some harmonics you play, the 11th and 7th harmonics, which are really different than standard tuning. And that piece has been around since 1942 or something, or 44, I think maybe. And so it's really clear to the horn player that you're playing something, you're playing microtones, just right there, without any effort, And the horn does that. That's the nature of the harmonic series. And they're easily accessible harmonics on the horn. So once you start playing with them and knowing they're there, then you can start to write and find other music that explores them in more depth. So that sort of really started fascinating me from about 1995 onwards. I really wanted to get into it. So the 3 degrees I've done have centered around the harmonic series and how to play it on the horn, how to play those intervals on other instruments, and how to express those microtones musically.
Michael, how did you learn to play harmonics?
It's just on the horn. I'm just there. As soon as you pick up a horn, you're playing harmonics. Just a question of which ones you're going to choose to play what note, So you can play, in an easily accessible register. The horn you can play do, re, mi, which is for us harmonics 8, 9, 10. They're just, those straightforward steps. And then if you play the 7th harmonic, it's the flat 7th and a really flat 7th, So they're just right there. You learn them from a young age, and you're usually taught that some of them are out of tune, but the truth of it is that they are their own flavour, and it's just a question of when do we use them or when do we not use them.
Now, as being a horn player, you're always transposing music. Do you ever get music that you never have to transpose? And how do you transpose on site? Well, what's the skill set involved in it?
Yeah, well, look, so for standard horn writing, and especially 20th century on, everything is mostly notated for horn and F.
Yep.
So we read a C and it sounds an F. So the transposition is, from that point of view, is done for us. But what happens is that lots of music from prior to the 20th century was written for a horn with a different crook length, so horn and E or E flat or a whole range, so a full range of 12, standard keys. And because once we started using valves in something for horn and E, we'd play with the second valve rather than put a whole new crook in. And then we'd have to rethink, okay, so the music's written in C major, and instead of being horn and F, we're looking at a horn and E, so that interval between horn and F and horn and E is a minor second, right? So, and if the written key is C major, we now have to think we're in B major, down a minor second, right? So that's the setup. So you've got to work out the interval of transposition, which is between how we read it and what the horn is that we're transposing to. And the key relation is the same interval. So you work those two things out, and then you look at each individual note. But because we've practiced our scales and arpeggios and all that sort of thing, for me, the strongest way to transpose is to recognise the scale degree that you're looking at and then put it into whatever key you have to be. If it's atonal music, then you've got issues, or if it's complicated tonality, even like some Brahms, then you've got to do a little bit of bending around with your mind, and maybe you have to look at each note individually, but you also look at the succession of intervals. So if you're looking at a note that says a C and you're transposing to a B, right, then the next note says E flat, well then you're going up, you've got to change by a minor third, so you go from a B to a D. So you're actually putting a range of things into place all at the same time, which support each other, which makes transposing from side successful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think conductors should always give a transposed score to the horn player, or just keep it in concert pitch?
No, they should. The horn player needs to read the music as it's been printed for the horn it was written for. So if it says horn and E, then you need the part in E, and then you work it out as a horn player.
Okay.
Because especially nowadays, we might be playing with a period group, and if somebody's transposed it, it's just you've got to retranspose it back to the key it was written for in order to play it on the crook that it's too complicated. And as a horn player, even if you're using your vowels, it's refreshing to see the part as the composer wrote it, because then you got an idea about how to play it, which is much more straightforward, I find. So you should always, the horn player should be given the part that the composer had organised for you.
Now, Michael, what advice do you have for any musician with scales? Because scales can get boring to play. I found when I would improvise on my scales, I would do it much better rather than doing the AMEB system, the two slurred, two tongued. Did you ever get creative with your scales? How did you
absolutely.
do it?
Get creative with your scales, yeah. Play them whatever way you feel like. As long as learning the pattern, you know how to make it work up and down, round and about, start on a different note, start from the second degree of the scale, start from the third degree of the scale, do a whole range of things that mix it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, different articulations. Just keep it as, even if it's boring, if you're mucking around with the scale and you're still working the pattern, then it's great practice. It just makes side reading so much easier. You see scale on the page, you know what to do.
Did you always
several hundred times already, thousands of times?
Did you always find when you were doing scales as a classical musician, you'd do them from memory, or you'd sight read it? What was your process in memorising your scales?
Yeah, just familiarity. Just hundreds and thousands of repetitions, and then it's in the mind,
Because there's
I don't think you want to need to do it from the written read. I mean, you got to read it. Perhaps if that's your primary way of engaging with music is through notation, then you read it. But you keep reading it just thousands of times, and then you just take away from the music. It's there,
Because there's so many different scales out there, pentatonic, whole tone, Egyptian, but in classical we've always gone with the melodic and harmonic minor. Have you experimented with pentatonics and whole tones?
Yeah, I have, yeah. And also I got really into, there's, in South India, there's 72 scales. So I got right into those and practiced all of them. And the construction of them is straightforward, and they include the ones that we're used to, and a few others. But just sort of playing around with those, and like you said, improvising with them, so you get to feel the flavour more by just mucking around, you know.
And how many hours a day do you practice, or did you practice when you were playing in the symphony orchestra?
Yeah, well, when I was if you're playing in an orchestra, then you hopefully you're playing for 3 hours or something, even if it's broken up with rest, and you got 2 calls in a day, you're probably getting in quite a bit of actual playing, but there'd always be practice as well. There'd be another half-hour warm-up and some other stuff at the other end of the day. So and if there was a day where you're not actually in the orchestra, then I would have done two hours minimum, And if there's a week off, then I wouldn't take it. It was only when I had 5 weeks off, and for holidays, that I'd take two weeks of my own off, and then 3 weeks to get back in condition. But when I went up at the height of really trying to improve playing, I'd be doing three hours or more a day.
Because it's very, very easy to burn out and get tired as well and overwhelmed, and I think sometimes you just need a break and just come back fresh.
Yeah, well, you got to try and pace it, I reckon. To me, pacing's always been important. I'd rather do 2 hours every day for 50 weeks a year than 5 hours a day for 10 weeks and then burn out. I didn't really get to burning out much. I was able to pace. I can pace quite well. I quite enjoy it.
I used to find, playing clarinet at a tertiary level, used to get hands would cramp up, jaw would get tired as well.
Yeah, well, you got to make sure that doesn't happen. Yeah, as soon as it happens, you either need to have a rest or you need some advice on how to set yourself up in a better way. But that happens to all musicians. You got to keep monitoring, what you're doing with your body so it doesn't get overstressed.
Yeah, I found too stress was not good because there was one time I was doing a performance. It was when I first started and being tired and anxious, and then I completely just lost concentration and missed like 10 bars of it. And had one of those. Have you ever had those moments?
Oh, I've had plenty of stress moments, and the odd occasion where I can't remember what line of music I'm on, or I've done a solo from memory, and then I've got to come back to the page after it, and it's sort of like, oh, where is it on the page? And miss a bar or something. But
all right, Michael, we'll end the interview there. Where can the audience find you on your website?
My website's thebrasswhisperer.com.
Yep.
All one word, The Brass Whisperer. All lowercase and .com. That's it, yeah.
All right, thank you for listening to the show today with Michael Dixon. I'm going to play my first single that I published on Spotify and streaming services called Death and Life. Remember to follow me on social media, links in the description. See you in the next episode. Bye for now.
The sweet aromas of the apple fritter, cinnamon roll, and blueberry muffin are hard to resist. So making it the rest of the way home without reaching in your McDonald's bag is no easy task. But nothing worth doing is easy.
Wake up and pair any one of these sweet, fluffy, frittery bakery treats with a McCafe iced coffee. Get any size and any flavor for just 99 cents until 11 a.m. Price and participation may vary.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. The sweet aromas of the apple fritter, cinnamon roll, and blueberry muffin are hard to resist. So making it the rest of the way home without reaching in your McDonald's bag is no easy task. But nothing worth doing is easy.
Wake up and pair any one of these sweet, fluffy, frittery bakery treats with a McCafe iced coffee. Get any size and any flavor for just 99 cents until 11 a.m. Price and participation may vary.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.